Before the Rockefellers had a dollar, they had nothing. Then, within a single decade, they controlled the most powerful industrial empire in the Western world. No one has ever fully explained how. That gap, the years between poverty and total dominance, is the hole at the center of American history that no official account has dared to fill. The documented record on William Avery Rockefeller, John D's father, is not flattering. A traveling medicine salesman drifting through upstate New York and the Midwest in the 1840s and 50s, a man with an arrest warrant for rape in Cayuga County in 1849, a man who eventually vanished, assumed a false identity in South Dakota, and died with essentially nothing to his name. That is the paternal foundation of what would become the greatest private fortune in recorded history. The official story says John D. Rockefeller built everything himself. Discipline, genius, ruthless but legal tactics applied to a booming new industry. It's a compelling narrative. It's also one that collapses the moment you apply basic arithmetic to it. Here are the documented facts. Rockefeller was earning between $300 and $500 a year as a teenage clerk in Cleveland. In 1858, at age 19, he co-founded a produce business, reportedly funded by $1,000 of his own savings and a $4,000 loan from his father. In today's money, that's roughly $130,000 from a patent medicine drifter. No existing record of William Avery Rockefeller's income remotely accounts for that sum. 5 years later, Rockefeller entered the oil business. Within 7 years after that, he controlled American oil refining. His competitors testified before Congress that the capital behind his operation could not have come from legitimate commerce alone. Congressional investigators, experienced businessmen themselves, stated explicitly in the record that they could not account for either the speed or the scale of what Rockefeller had built. The official response to this has always been the same. He reinvested every dollar. Compounding genius. The arithmetic, if anyone bothered to run it against the actual timeline, does not hold. So where did the money come from? The most overlooked possibility sits directly inside the timeline. The window between 1858 and 1865 is the Civil War. And the Civil War was not simply a military conflict. It was the largest single economic redistribution in American history up to that point, producing enormous fortunes in a compressed window through mechanisms the official record has examined only selectively. The Union Army required massive quantities of food and supplies. Cleveland was a key distribution hub. Government contracting during that war was notoriously corrupt. Phantom deliveries, systematic overcharging, kickback arrangements with procurement officers were all documented by congressional investigations that ran during and after the conflict. The business records of Rockefeller and Clark from that specific period are, by the standards of the later Rockefeller Archive, conspicuously thin. The Rockefeller Archive Center in Sleepy Hollow, New York, holds what is arguably the most curated private historical record in America. It has supported genuine scholarship. It was also created by and continues to be governed by Rockefeller family interests. The documentation from the years that would answer the capital question, 1858 through 1864, is, in the archive's own words, incomplete. That incompleteness has been treated as an archival inconvenience rather than an investigative invitation. But other sources exist and have never been systematically examined for this purpose. Cleveland city directories from the 1860s, congressional records from Civil War contracting investigations, railroad freight records from the early 1870s documenting the specific arrangements Standard Oil was negotiating before the trust was formalized. None of these have been interrogated with the seriousness the arithmetic demands. There's a broader pattern worth examining. Rockefeller entered oil in 1863. Carnegie was accumulating capital and railroad relationships in Pittsburgh through the 1850s and would build his steel empire in the early 1870s. J.P. Morgan launched his banking career in New York in 1857. Cornelius Vanderbilt pivoted from steamships to railroads in the 1860s with a speed and capital base that exceeded what his documented steamship revenues could have funded. 4 men, 4 sectors, each consolidating dominance within the same compressed window, their interests reinforcing rather than competing with each other during the critical formation period. No record of coordination exists, but the pattern of their activities suggests something more than coincidence. The research community that operates under the loose label of Tartaria has been pointing at this pattern for years and asking a more radical version of the question. The suggestion is that the great industrial fortunes of the post-Civil War era were not built from scratch, but assembled from assets, infrastructure, financial networks, physical systems belonging to a prior order disrupted in the mid-19th century. A reset in their framework that cleared the field and redistributed existing resources to the men whose names history then recorded as self-made. The specific evidence they cite is the same evidence that motivates the conventional capital question interpreted differently. The American railroad network that Rockefeller's entire empire depended on had grown from essentially nothing in the 1830s to a continent-spanning system within 3 decades. The engineering of that infrastructure, the gradient management, the mountain tunneling, the bridge construction, reflects technical capabilities that some researchers argue are not entirely consistent with the documented state of American engineering at the time of construction. Mainstream historians push back on this with reason. The early railroad was built at enormous human cost, with techniques developed through trial and failure. But the question the Tartaria framework raises, whether the infrastructure context within which the great fortunes emerged was itself inherited rather than constructed, is worth holding alongside the conventional capital mystery rather than dismissing. What is not in dispute is this: the Rockefellers had no recorded wealth before 1858. Within 15 years, they commanded the most consequential industrial infrastructure in the Western world. The bridge the official account builds between those two facts is made of genius and reinvested profits. The timeline does not support the load. The record exists. The arithmetic is available to anyone willing to run it. The Cleveland directories, the congressional contracting files, the railroad freight records, none have been examined with the specific question in mind. That question has not been asked with rigor because the institutions best positioned to fund the asking, the universities, the research foundations, the policy institutes, the media organizations, have for over a century been operating inside an infrastructure of endowments and donations that traces directly back to the fortune whose origins remain unexplained. That is not a conspiracy, that is a funding structure, and funding structures determine which questions get asked. The gap is still there, the arithmetic is still waiting, the record has never been fully read.